Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to people in other time zones. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit. It's great to be with you. I'm going to be interviewing a very special guest today, Barbara Fields. Barbara is the Executive Director of the Association for Global New Thought, AG&T, and was the co-convener of Global Oneness Day with Humanities Team in 2013 and 2014, and for that matter, has been a close partner involved with Global Oneness Day from all the way from the beginning in 2010. So I know you're going to enjoy this program. We're going to cover a lot of ground. Barbara is just such a great friend. In fact, Barbara, do you want to say hi real quick? We're going to come back, and I'm going to give you a proper introduction here in a little bit as we formally bring you in. But do you want to say hi?
Of course I do. I want to say hi to everybody listening and to Steve and to the wonderful Humanities team, because I think it's good to acknowledge with everyone out there that even the people that we don't see behind the scenes that are making these activities happen all the time, it's we're really grateful to all of you.
Oh, yes, we are. Yes, and thank you. And we're going to hear a lot more from Barbara. But on that topic, I have Nanette Kennedy, Dee Meyer, and Monica Augustine here with me. They're the angels that are supporting this program. They help with the promotion, the running the back end. They'll be bringing your questions in. And yes, boy, we'd be nowhere without just the whole team. So, yeah, big shout-out to all of the people in AG&T and Humanities team that just make our work possible. Okay, I'm going to give Barbara a proper introduction here shortly. I want to just share again, we're real excited about today's program. We have about 20,500 registered for today's call. Due to schedule conflicts, some can't listen in live, so we do send out a recorded link so these people can listen in later. Thank you so much, everyone, for prioritizing time to be here for this really important conversation. As always, this call is interactive with each of you, our listeners, so we invite you to put your questions in the question window on Instant Teleseminar. I promise we'll get to several of your questions here during the hour. A little about Humanities Team as we get started. In Humanities Team, we see there is only one presence, the divine, and see we are all offspring and expressions of the divine. This means God's love, light, grace, and peace are ours because there is no separation and we share the same essence. We don't share this as something academic or intellectual. We believe everyone and everything is a beautiful and sacred face of the divine. Since our founding in 2003, we've done our best to live as one with the divine, each other, and our earth home. We don't need to be perfect. It doesn't have to feel heavy. We must only do our best. When we talk about oneness with the divine, of course, this is true for all of life, not just humanity. This has repercussions for how we see ourselves, others, and the earth that is our home. This means everyone and everything is sacred and should be treated as such. It also means we're responsible for the world around us because, in truth, it's part of our authentic self, encompassing the whole of the earth. Perhaps there's nothing more important than this, coming to see ourselves as a cell in the body of the divine, the earth, and stepping into a role where we're caring for the earth and the world that we live in. This is important and urgent work. We are advocating personal development that crosses over into all of our roles, including that of partner, parent, and community citizen, but also institutional change, so we live as one collectively and create a fulfilling, compassionate, and sustainable world. If you resonate with our work, we invite you to go to our humanitiesteam.org website and reach out to us about projects you'd like to become involved in. It's a brand new website, so you might even take a moment to take a look at the site now. And again, that's humanitiesteam.org. Okay, please get comfortable as we begin our program. I'm now going to give Barbara a proper introduction. Dr. Barbara Fields is the Executive Director of the Association for Global New Thought, AG&T, co-founder and project director, the Gandhi King Chavez Season for Nonviolence, program director, Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago, co-founder and project director of the Synthesis Dialogues with His Holiness the Dalai Lama of Tibet in India, 1999, Trent, Italy, 2001, Rome, 2004. And as I mentioned earlier, Barbara and AG&T co-convened Global Oneness Day with Humanities Team in 2013 and 2014, and they've really been active with Global Oneness Day all the way back to the beginning in 2010. She is a close friend of Humanities Team, and Barbara, welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit.
Thanks so much, Steve. I'm really grateful. It's generous of you to have folks like me on the program because, you know, we're all in this together. And, you know, AG&T has projects. I have projects I'd love to share. And the forum that you've cultivated is very, very valuable. So I have to express gratitude for inviting me to be here.
We're just really pleased, and it's a privilege to have you here with us, Barbara. And of course, as we were just sharing, coming onto the program, you've got such a busy schedule now. AG&T's got so many great things going on, and so I look forward to just stepping through this with you and getting caught up. It's a great opportunity for me and Humanities team and all of our listeners. And Barbara, I thought we, maybe we could just start at the beginning with, the way you all within AG&T and in our world, we too like to frame things as spiritually motivated social activism. You shared those terms several years ago, spiritually motivated social activism, and it really gets to the heart of what you are and what you're doing, and for that matter, what we're doing. Do you want to, that was, I'm sure, part of your original vision when AG&T came together, but do you want to just maybe say something about that as we get started?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I remember actually the first official meeting that AG&T had. It was back in Los Angeles in 1997, and I hadn't really made the decision to come on board at that point. It was Barbara Marx Hubbard who had remembered me from the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, where we formed our relationship back in the early 90s, the centennial celebration back in Chicago, 1993. And years later, she called me to say, "You're the only person in the world who can be the executive director for this group of ministers in the New Thought movement." And I hadn't ever heard of the New Thought movement. I did know about Unity Church and Church of Religious Science. So, various circumstances ensued. And then when we had this meeting in Los Angeles, I'll never forget it. We were in a hotel room. I was getting to meet everyone. And at the Parliament of Religions, I had made friends with Dr. Arun Gandhi and his wife Sunanda of the M.K. Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence, which was then in Memphis. And Arun, at a backyard barbecue after the Parliament, had said, his grandfather, Mahatma Gandhi's 50th memorial anniversary was coming up that next year, and he wanted to do something meaningful that wasn't just a conference. And one thing led to another, and Arun and I had come up with this idea of an entire season for nonviolence, because that was the same year that Dr. Martin Luther King's memorial anniversary was on April 4th. And that was the 30th year, so it was the 50th and 30th memorial. And we felt those were kind of bookends for these two legendary peacemakers, beginning in the January 30th, which sort of moved into the early spring season, which suggests generativity and the birth of new ideas and new life springing forth. And that's how Season for Nonviolence first became articulated. And so when I was with AG&T at this first meeting, they said, "Well, we'd like to invite you to be our executive director." And I said, "I will, but I have a condition, and that is that our first program that we endorse and put a lot of resources behind is the Gandhi King Season for Nonviolence, because I want spirituality to engage with the world and work to manifest things that are of service to our lives from a spiritually motivated point of view, so that we're not just going to church on Sunday, we're not just having our spiritual practice alone in our cave as we meditate, but that we're really using those principles that come from so deep within us, just like Humanities Team as articulated in its own mission. And then move those principles as the foundation for our activism in the world. I actually, in 1997 and even to this day, I can't stress how strongly I endorse that idea.
Oh, boy, amen and amen. And of course, this Gandhi King Chavez Season for Nonviolence has grown into something huge, hasn't it?
Well, we've just completed the 19th year at the and I want to talk just briefly about the project. Is this a good time in the discussion
Yeah,
to talk
please.
about
I'd
it
love
a bit?
to. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a laboratory, we find, for understanding how grassroots spiritually motivated activism does or does not work. And so we decided that we would compile program resources for nonviolence education about the project, put them up on a website. Remember how almost prehistoric websites looked back there in the late 90s and early 2000s? But we decided just to slap up a bunch of resources that we had vetted and written and found, offer them for free to all the New Thought churches spread around the country and around the world, and to other groups, university groups, student groups, boys clubs, other faith traditions, anybody who felt they wanted to do this, but often we're stopped in our activism because, let's face it, we've got one or two jobs, we've got families, we volunteer. So you can't ask people to generate from nothing a new project on their own. And so we found that by kind of putting activism in a box, I'm not sure I ever used that expression before, that we could get more people to form groups. And in the first year, when we thought we might get half a dozen or so cities, a dozen cities to participate or take interest, we ended up with about 119 cities that year, and that was just the first year. So it kept growing and growing because people found their own leadership. They became empowered. We organized the resources, and we sort of controlled communications and reported back out what people were reporting to us. But we didn't deem to dictate how any one individual community should express this program in their community because they were in the most unique position to know what was needed. So we didn't micromanage anything. We welcomed creative ideas. People were sending us resources about the programs they did, and then we'd post them the following year to become models for other people in other cities. So there was just kind of something we couldn't have predicted, but a kind of a busy beehive of activity. And that grew, I think, on year 10, we had a wonderful event called the Gandhi King Peace Train. It was actually 4 vintage train cars that got attached to the back of an Amtrak route from Los Angeles all the way up the coast of California. And in those cars, we had about 250 people we had microphones and speakers, and we had people giving programs and having concerts and eating lunch. And for the first time, all these people who had participated in the Season for Nonviolence for 10 years came together and met each other for the first time so that they could compare notes. And then we had a conference up in San Jose. We came back down the coast on the train, more programs. And the group itself decided that it wanted to expand the Season for Nonviolence to 4 seasons a year. And so in 2007, we initiated the Season for the Earth, and then the Season for Humane Service. And then in the fall, falling during Global Oneness Day, although it wasn't in existence quite yet, is the Season for Interfaith and Intercultural Celebration. So we have groups doing one or the other or all of them all year long, and we just completed the 19th annual Gandhi King Season for Nonviolence, and I'm very proud to say that during the time we've been in existence, we've had task forces participate in 900 cities and 67 countries. So, and this is a God job because nobody can actually plan for something like this. It emerges and it grows itself. I'm so humbled by what people do when they step into their own leadership.
Oh gosh, wow! Well, I said it grew into something huge. Truly, and I was shocked to hear you say, Barbara, it started in 119 cities and now grown into, you say, 900 cities, 67 countries, and a God job. And of course, gosh, isn't that really? Of course, we love to use that same description in Humanities Team, because if we are all one with the divine, then gosh, everything's a God job, isn't it? Because we're just feeling into these inspirations and then co-creating together a better world through this spiritual connection. But I love this project, and of course, we've worked together over the years, so I've had a chance to really go in and see these projects in these different cities around the world, the social activism that's spiritually motivated, and it's exciting. The UN has even I know you bring this work into the UN and talk about it even in that forum. It's exciting.
Oh yeah, we usually have we had a launch. We launch in March, right in the middle of the season, every year since 1998. At the United Nations, and our primary audience are the middle and high school students of New York City, many of whom are considered youth at risk, who have had some amazing guidance from task force leaders who are teachers in that system that got wind of Gandhi King Season for Nonviolence and incorporated it into the school systems. We also have a curriculum that the Los Angeles group wrote and got incorporated into the school systems. So the New York event was amazing, and it went on for about 16 years. And listen to this funny story. Maybe it's not so funny. I think it was 2013 or 14, we invited His Holiness the Dalai Lama to become one of our principals in the Gandhi King Chavez Tenzin Gyatso Season for Nonviolence. Because, just because we name Gandhi and King certainly doesn't mean that we could name hundreds of others who also deserve such stature. So, but because we have a relationship with the Office of Tibet, we got permission to officially add him and got a statement and a video, and it was all very exciting. And so during that launch celebration at the UN that year, we were all excited to tell people about this, and then we were told by the United Nations that we couldn't mention or describe or give information about the Dalai Lama's participation or talk about Tibet because of the sensitive relationship that they have with China. And I don't want to go into too much detail because this is a very politically charged issue, and I certainly don't want to offend anyone or cast dispersion one way or the other. But the UN does have a history of negating and not recognizing the presence of Tibet because of pressure from the Chinese government, which can be pretty heavy duty sometimes. And so we felt so kind of violated and not really embarrassed because Office of Tibet understands the situation. But we didn't have any choice. We had to go on with the event that year because we just found out we couldn't talk about this at the very last minute. And so the next year, the students themselves who had been participating all these years said, we don't want to do our program at the UN anymore. And so they went because of this. They said it was a civil rights violation. And they went to the headquarters of the United Federation of Teachers. The headquarters is in New York City on Broadway. They have a big auditorium. And the kids went to them and arranged to start having the program there instead as a form of protest. And the reason I'm telling the story is because we had nothing to do with the decision, and the fact that it was the students themselves who had been studying nonviolent civil disobedience and civil rights and spiritual principles, including the morality and ethics involved in these kinds of quite sophisticated, usually adult decisions. And those students, the so-called students, youth at risk in New York City, they came up with this and they executed it. So how cool is that?
Oh, that is totally cool. And gosh, this whole, of course, you hear so many stories here too about the Dalai Lama not being able to walk through the front door of the White House because the White House sees pressure. We even had our own little experience when we gave Desmond Tutu our Spiritual Leadership Award in 2009. We were in South Africa. That's not too far from India, so we invited the Dalai Lama to come, and because he was supposed to be in the country anyway for a forum, and South Africa wouldn't let him in, because of pressure from China.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, my God. Yeah, I remember when you guys did that.
Yeah, I just have to believe that the reason that this is all happening with the oppression of him and his people is just so that he could be available to all of us, whereas if he were in Tibet, maybe he wouldn't be the world figure that he is. And forced out of Tibet with all of this oppression, we all have to make his cause our cause. And, of course, I know, as you mentioned, you all are friends with him. He's coming to Boulder, incidentally, here in June. In fact, I just got my tickets today, June 23rd.
Oh, wow.
He's here in Boulder. I haven't ever seen him live, and I know he just makes an incredible impression on people, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, Boulder is so lucky to have him because he's scheduled so far out now. But, this is an interesting thing. I love to talk about, muse about this subject, really, because I believe that His Holiness, he's created intentionally and probably not always intentionally, he's created a kind of symbolism that there's something beyond religion and culture, which has also been the kind of the source of divisiveness among us, so that when we speak about conflict and war and sort of intractable differences, if you trace back the roots, you don't have to go too far to find out that religious and cultural differences, along with resources and civil war and power struggles, but cultural differences and religious differences that divide us have typically been the basis for this kind of conflict. I think at one point they said 87% of all wars in history were basically religious or culturally based. And so what inadvertently happened in Tibet, which made Tibetan Buddhism, or more specifically, the values that His Holiness represented. He never advocates that or proselytizes that people should become Tibetan Buddhists. He basically says we need more compassion, we need more ethics, we need more service, we need more self-awareness. And so these are values that are common to all religions and all cultures by whatever name they're called. And so pointing to the example of what happened in Tibet has been an opportunity for the international community to understand that all religions and cultures can move to a more common foundation, which, of course, this is what Humanities Team and Global Oneness Day is all about, that we can be proud of our cultures, our lineages, our history, our traditions, our rituals. Those are marvelous and rich, and we should all be proud of that. But then at another level, we share these values that are values of the human family. And I can't think of a better representative than His Holiness in the way that he's graciously handled the situation, basically saying, hey guys, it's not really about Tibet, it's also about everyone on the planet, that we have to dig a little deeper and look at these situations differently.
Yeah. Oh, he's just such an incredible example, because all of what we're talking about, of course, is infusing our sacred values in our daily living. And this is what your Season for Nonviolence is about. It's what AG&T is about. It's what Humanities Team is about, Global Oneness Day. And of course, the Dalai Lama, as you mentioned, he's always talking about the practical applications. Is there never any convert to, Tibetan Buddhism, for God's sakes? It's compassion, really seeing who we really are and living in this oneness as in where our compassion is in action. And then he has this incredible sense of humor to go with it. So he's touching your heart, touching your mind, and just touching us in a very, very profound way by just being this incredible model for somebody that's really has infused their values into their daily living. And of course, he's much more than that. He's inspiring people to live this way also.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting that not at this time, because in its original iteration, the governance of Tibet, which was under the leadership of the Dalai Lama, he's the 14th Dalai Lama, the political and spiritual leadership was held in the same person. And, now, of course, everyone's familiar with the standard of the separation of church and state, which, as we've seen in our own politics, is really kind of an elusive standard, because the shadow side of religion being exempted from affairs of state comes back to haunt us in extreme fundamentalism, not just in our own government, but we're finding that it's true all over the world, that very, very fundamentalist religion is influencing government in very dark and destructive ways. But originally in Tibet, this fusion of spirituality and governance was meant to be a very early form of spiritually motivated activism, because decisions were being made by someone and a community of people who were dedicated to spiritual deepening and making decisions based on consciousness and spiritual principles. That was not able to sustain, and it was the Dalai Lama himself who basically advocated for a separation, to have a separate political arm and a separate spiritual arm, because of the very complicated situation that they face in the world today. But when you think about it, the time is ripe for this discussion about not how fundamentalist religion should determine political policy, but how spiritual values should be considered when governance of a people is being formulated and decisions are being made, because once again, these universal spiritual values like justice and compassion and equity and sharing and respect, all of those values should be present in our political decision making. And how many of us on this call today really feel that's what's going on in our own government, for example?
Yeah, well, isn't that the truth? But boy, that is our universal spiritual values present in our political decision making, and for that matter, in everything. All of the Barbara Marx Hubbard's her wheel, every sphere of life. Of course, that's your work and our work, and it makes so much sense, doesn't it? You almost wonder, how did things ever unfold into this crazy, kind of pure capitalist way of living, which is more the Western world, and which is, I think, the envy of all of the world, where there's so much focus on just the material, and of course, material and financial is important. It's a good thing, not a bad thing, but that it became the entire focus. Of course, that's where the dysfunction came in, as opposed to really being in touch with our values and infusing our values in our daily living and in our political, of course, in the political realm and governance. And thank God, this is happening. We're moving in this direction. This whole awakening, this transformation, this birth that we talk about is this, isn't it? It's really coming into the living, the embodiment of all of this. And of course, in today's media, we don't see evidence of this. We see the polarity and the friction and really just the craziness and the fear and the fed up. But what is said is that this is all just coming up for healing. That if we're going to really come into the mature civilization that is coming from this birth and this transformation, this shift, that we have to first heal what is ours to heal. So these things that we see, this polarity, this fear, this fed up, these business that's not working, economies that aren't working, all of these things, they need to come to the surface for healing, and this is where we're, one of our roles is to just be alchemists and to hold these things and to heal these things together. Huh?
Absolutely. I think many of the listeners on the call are familiar with Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, who's a dear friend, and he's been the president of Association for Global New Thought since 2002. We were at Morehouse College, Martin Luther King Jr. Chapel at Morehouse College one year, and he was speaking to a group of pastors, ministers from around the city of Atlanta. And he said, today's headlines are really just prayer requests. And that line always stuck with me.
Yeah.
That we can choose to take what's coming up as negatives in the world. And believe me, I'm not the Pollyanna type. You know me well enough to know that by now, Steve. I don't paint things with rose-colored glasses. But I was going to say we have a choice, but what's really more true is we have no choice but to look at the negative coming up in our society today as opportunities or requests to heal the world, not just with our prayer, but with our engagement. And so this year, Association for Global New Thought had a very definitive meeting, series of meetings actually, and we took a look at all the goals that we set for ourselves when we got together back in 1997, and I'm happy to say that we said, okay, we've reached all the bold and audacious goals that we said we wanted to reach in our first 16 years. We went to the UN, we had meetings with the Dalai Lama, we ran a major grassroots project, and we had big conferences, and we were very proud to look back and look at the work that was done. And so the question was, are we done, or is there something next? Is there something new moving forward? And so with a great deal of deliberation, discussion, prayer, meditation, we actually defined a new mission for the Association for Global New Thought based on engaged spirituality. And it's an engaged spirituality that inspires the individual life and empowers social upliftment. We maintain that we can provide tools to empower what we're naming the conscious majority. And we're using conscious majority in kind of a visionary sense. We haven't done a census or taken a poll, and this isn't based on whether we think the majority of the people on the planet, go left or right or this party or that ideology. But what we do know is that it's a pretty good guess that the regular humans on this planet feel as if they have more in common about their values, bringing up families, having shelter, being decent human beings in times of crisis, collaborating. We think that the majority of people on the planet actually believe that that's the way life should be, and that in many cases it's leadership and factions and government that claim to represent us but don't really represent that grassroots set of values that we share. So we're going to put on a conference in October in San Diego that's basically a symposium, a fully interactive symposium that basically tries to support and unfold this idea that engaging our spirituality in the world can provide us with tools that empower the conscious majority, that we're part of it. We have to take responsibility. There is no role too big, too small, no person too important, too insignificant, that everyone's got a role to play, and it's not just about finding your passion. I really have to say that at this point in life, there are a lot of us who pretty much understand what our passion is driving us toward, And I think what is missing are tools and leadership and guidance and initiatives that allow us to put all that to work in service of a better world, because we know that we can do it.
Oh, awesome. Well, let's talk some more about this. I wanted to make sure we got to this. This is your big initiative. I know it launches the evening of Monday, October 24th. But let me just share to listeners, please do put your questions, comments in the window. One of the things that came in here from Monica is, she says, I love the idea, Steve and Barbara, that all that comes up and is in the headlines are just to be healed and prayer requests. That was the quote from Michael. And, of course, Michael and Ricky, his wife, were our Spiritual Leadership Award winners. They're just so amazing, incredible leaders, incredibly inspiring. They were our Spiritual Leadership Award winners last year, and it was such a privilege for us to spend a little time with them. He's amazing, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the genuine article. There aren't too many of those around.
No, there aren't. He really lives it, and you can just see it in the food he eats, his prayer, his way of interacting with people. He's just amazing, and his wife Ricky too. She's what an amazing person she is. Well, let's talk more about this conference that's coming up. You called it a fully interactive symposium. It starts Monday, October 24th. I love the way you kind of stepped through that. You said, of course, it's about engaging our spirituality in the world. No role is too big or too small. And you said, this isn't just about getting psyched up or something. It's about tools, leadership, guidance, and taking the initiative. Let's go down into a discussion of this more. This is fascinating, and I'm sure people want to participate.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was about to say, I know that this call isn't meant to be a business meeting, but I had the idea that as our people from New Thought and other places will be sort of getting ready to drive or fly into San Diego for the symposium on October 24th. And I think what we'll do in support of Global Oneness Day this year is to put out some kind of formal invitation for people while they're sitting in their airports, or when if they arrive in the hotel and they have time and they turn on their computers, for everybody to try to get into Global Oneness Day together as they're awaiting the opening plenary, which doesn't happen until that evening, because that would be a wonderful way for everyone to kind of come into attunement together as they're getting ready to go into this real-time gathering for the rest of the week. Don't you think that would be a good idea?
Oh, God, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we need to I love that, and I saw that it actually starts right as our program's closing. I think there's an hour and a half or something, and then yours begins. So that'd be wonderful, and maybe, we've got to connect with our other friend, Barbara. Of course, Barbara Marks Hubbard, and you and I got to do these programs together, and she's got her panel that day, and it's going to be pre-recorded. So maybe we can even you could come into that, and we could talk about both.
We'll discuss the logistics offline, but I think it's actually a great idea, and so we'll talk about how that will look as the next months go on.
Yeah, that's exciting. So Barbara, fully interactive symposium. Okay, what does that mean? You've got some really fresh, powerful stuff that you're doing here when you create a fully interactive symposium. What exactly are you going to do with the audience?
Yeah, we're kind of stepping off the deep end as we usually do. Like, for example, our Awakened World Conference in 2014 was a sacred film festival in Santa Barbara, and we never did a film festival before. We had no idea, like, what? A film festival? But we just stepped off the edge, and it was terrific. So now we're trying a little different model. We do have, of course, some really cherry-picked, engaged spiritual activists who will come and join us. We've invited Nipun Mehta, Wayne Muller, Bishop Yvette Flunder, who's an evangelical female black bishop who is really, really engaged right there in the trenches with what's going on with racism and poverty and so on and so forth. And your friend, Masami Sionji, the mother of Yuka and her sisters, who are authors of the Fuji Declaration, she's doing such wonderful work on women and peace in the world. And so we've invited her to come and be with us. So we've also invited James O'D to come in. He may need to join us remotely. But basically you see that we've invited people whose track record in terms of spiritual activism is right out there for everyone to see, that it's not just theory to them, it's not abstraction. We can really point to the work that they've accomplished from this point of view, sort of to be our mentors and our guides as we move through. So that element will be present. But what we're doing this year is that the workshop presentations that are interactive throughout the week, we're inviting anyone from the grassroots population, from our consciousness movement, from Humanities Team, from AT&T, whoever has a proposal to submit that actually brings forth some new material and examples or ideas about how engaged spirituality shows up in their own life. We, on our website for the event, which is consciousmajority.org, where there's a proposal, a form where you can submit a proposal to bring your own workshop to the symposium, because we really want a dimension where there's a lot of grassroots sharing from people who would ordinarily never be asked or, never have an opportunity to bring their amazing work in front of an audience of people who were interested in the same idea and wanted to learn more. And I think that that's a very innovative take on this symposium, is that it's not just about, leaders and speakers and entertainment and, we're going to have a really good time and then we're going to go home and do nothing. It's a working conference, and we're inviting grassroots leaders to show up and share their stuff with the participants.
I love that. Yeah, I love the a real working conference, and then the interactive nature where, as you say, you're inviting those that want to present to come in and interactively. Some will be coming in remotely, right, presenting to the audience. Others will be there live. Our conscious business thing comes to mind as something we'll have to come knock on your door and talk about that and see if it is something that makes sense to bring in, because, of course, that's bringing spirituality to business.
That's an excellent idea. I think we need to have a presentation there on that and introduce it to our community in a formal way. So let's definitely talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, boy, we need these global conference calls to catch up on, Barbara. Well,
I know, but you see, everything's popping.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as you mentioned, even before the call, that's part of this whole birth and shift, isn't it? That these synchronicities just seem to be stepping up. That it's time, and so where we have these ideas that are advancing humanity and spirituality, it just seems that resources are all over the place. So it keeps us pretty busy. But exciting, and that conference sounds great. So it's October 24th through when? And you mentioned the website's consciousmajority.org. That's where they go to learn more about the conference, Barbara?
Yeah, everything's there. It goes through the 27th. And, in fact, on Monday and Tuesday of next week, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, so that's May 2nd and May 3rd, we have AG&T leaders, like, for example, on Monday, Michael Beckwith, Reverend Wendy Craig Purcell, Reverend Temple Hayes from down in St. Petersburg, Florida, will be giving a 30-minute webinar giving more details and discussing the symposium and engaged spirituality. And then the next night on Tuesday, those guys are on May 3rd. I always get this confused. On May 2nd, we have the leadership of Centers for Spiritual Living, the spiritual leader, Dr. Ken Gordon, Dr. Roger Teal, who's got that wonderful community in Lakewood, Colorado, Mile High Church, and Dr. David Alexander from up in Lake Oswego, Oregon. they're giving the webinar for 30 minutes this coming Monday, and then the others are giving the webinar about the symposium on Tuesday. So now those are kind of long links to sign up for the symposium. But if there's anyone on the call that would like to attend, they could email me at barbara@agnt.org. If you want a link to register for the free webinar next week, I'd be happy to just send you the link.
Great, Barbara@agnt.org. And yes, I'm on the email list. I saw those. Those look exciting. So that's this coming Monday, May 2nd, and Tuesday, May 3rd. So do reach out to Barbara if you'd like to just get more information on those webinars. These are the leaders and the board members of AGNT. So I'm sure that'll be an exciting program. That sounds awesome, Barbara. Here's a question that came in. I wanted to make sure we got to bring in some questions too. It says, how would you speak to a balance between finding justice in big and small ways and the peaceful way of handling confrontation or disagreements in business and personal affairs?
So read that question again so that I can really understand what is being asked.
Find a balance. Speak to a balance between finding justice in big and small ways and the peaceful way of handling confrontation or disagreements in business and personal matters. Let's see. So the first part of it, finding balance between justice in big and small ways, and then the peaceful way of handling confrontation. It sounds like it's getting at justice, where we're kind of really speaking out, and whether it's something huge or small, the courage of speaking out versus the aspect, the peaceful way of, where it's more maybe coming from blessing from spirit and not, more the embodiment of spirit in the way we handle things. I think that's kind of the question that we're trying to get to here.
Well, I hope I'm interpreting correctly, but what comes to mind are some of our friends, like, do you know Reverend Charles Gibbs, who was the director for 25 years of United Religions Initiative up at
Absolutely.
El Presidio,
he moved back east. He's a wonderful. I got to visit with him recently, and I love Charles Gibbs.
Oh, today is his birthday, by the way. I forgot.
Oh, my gosh.
We just talked about it. He emailed me a couple of days ago saying that he had seen the announcement for this program and that he was happy because we were doing it and he was celebrating his 65th birthday today. So I don't think he's listening, but if you are, happy birthday, Charles. Anyway, the reason he came into mind is that he's working sort of part-time. I think he's poet in residence is his official title, with a group in D.C. that has been doing some amazing work in Sierra Leone, among, I believe, some other places in the world. And places like Rwanda, Sierra Leone, they're places that we don't always tune in on, that we do know have survived such atrocities in the communities. We're really family and tribes, civil war of people from the same nation have just been engaged in horrendous conflict with members of their own family in certain ways. And this isn't the place to go into a lot of detail, but the reason that I'm bringing it up in response to this question is that the work that organization is doing, and I think many organizations are attempting to do this way, is to come in and bring teams of people that work with the community members who have actually been victims and perpetuators of this level of atrocity in order to establish healing from the PTSD and the years and years that it takes for people to even begin to live after surviving that kind of conflict, and actually achieving great results in terms of expression and forgiveness and community that can be achieved using conscious values and spiritual principles in situations like this, then surely some of the less horrific situations that we face in our immediate neighborhoods, our communities, our nation, our world, certainly a level of consciousness and engagement can come in with organizations and teams of people who want to address the real core issues of the human being when they're actually involved in a conflict. I'm not talking about government policy or legislation or anything like that right now, because I think that that's top-heavy when we're talking about missing the fact that we don't actually ask people how do they feel and what do they need to heal and what's it going to take to put a community back together. I think that that is where all of our work really should be focusing right now, whether it's right here in our own nation where there are hate crimes and racism and terrible things that we hear about every day. I think there's lots of opportunities, alternative opportunities for us to actually be part of projects that step in and help heal that kind of conflict.
I love that. Gosh, and of course this is restorative justice, isn't it? Where
Exactly.
where we're bringing people together, versus the kind of penal system we have in the U.S. now, where it's actually illegal in many states to bring the victims and perpetuators together. And it's just so crazy because this model that was created in South Africa, Desmond Tutu, with what happened down there, where they created restorative justice, and it's now spread all over the world. It's so powerful, where we do bring people together, the perpetuators and the victims, and just allow the healing to naturally happen. It's amazing, and boy, that is an example of just making our headlines prayers, isn't it? Where we're doing exactly that, and we can. There's so many areas where, with troubled youth, battered victims, even just the kinds of situations you run into with the homeless. My family works with homeless here in Boulder, and the problems that they run into, where they don't have camping permits and they're arrested and they're trying to stay out of jail, is they're just trying to create a policy here in Boulder, Colorado, for dealing in a helpful way with the homeless. And they're getting more and more of it right, creating shelters that have dental and medical and other kinds of facilities, and that require the right kind of behavior. But some pieces, like the not allowing camping in parts of the city, aren't working. So anyway, I love that, restorative justice, and inviting people in to bring together victims and perpetuators to create healing. We're getting close to the end of our program here, so I've got some announcements I want to make before we close. Barbara, one thing I'll just bring back around, because we talked about the Dalai Lama earlier. Of course, there's this famous quote here in the last couple of years. Thich Nhat Hanh had said, "The next Buddha will be a Sangha," which is really what our work is all about, isn't it? That all of us, all of the listeners here, we're here to create community, to be inspired, to listen. But at the end of the day, it's really about us coming together to really grow into the fullness of spirit embodied, which is what this quote is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, the next Buddha will be a Sangha, a community. Yeah, years ago I wrote an article for Cosmos Journal. I love that journal, by the way. It's an excellent publication. Yeah. And I think in the article, or even the title of the article, it was something to do with that the next Messiah is going to be a group, a collective Messiah. And I wasn't meaning to speak in a limited way to the Judeo-Christian tradition, but it's coming in very clearly now that the next level of spiritual leadership is not embodied in any one individual. It's the way that the collective consciousness or the community begins to take responsibility for collective leadership, collective guidance, collective wisdom. And as we've been doing our homework for decades now, going to the workshops, attending the seminars, reading the books, we know what this all means. And now it's time to put it into action, because that's the only style of leadership that I believe has the power to penetrate some of the challenges we're facing today.
Yes, it is. And that's what our work is about, just coming from this place of oneness, this which is, we believe, ultimate reality, that we are all one with the divine, each other, and our earth home, really embodying that. And so as in our own lives, with our partners, as conscious parents, as community organizers and citizens, and then just globally, just really stepping into the fullness of this. This is what this birth and shift and transformation is about, and it's happening. And Barbara, you and AG&T have been a big, just huge leaders in all of this. So I want to thank you so much for being here to share here during your program, and to for listeners to have a chance to get to know you. And there are people, I see Barbara Bedford was one of the people that brought in a comment. So they're all friends here among us too. But I know some people are meeting you for the first time. Thank you so much for coming in and spending a little time with us. And that is, her website is agnt.org if you want to learn more about the Association for Global New Thought, agnt.org. So, Barbara, I'm going to come back and thank you some more, but let me just start with that. I mentioned conscious business here during this program. Of course, we were right in the middle of our launch of our conscious business curriculum, and I want to just I want to read you this, what we call our elevator story. So this is this little description of why we're Humanities team is getting involved in the business community. So you might even close your eyes if you like the idea. It's fairly short. I'm going to just read this to you real quick. The current standard of business isn't working. It's not sustainable for life on Earth, and people are fed up. Businesses do not operate in silos. Everything they do impacts people, the environment, and the world around them. While businesses are the biggest source of some of our world's most challenging problems, they can also offer the greatest hope and potential to help solve these problems. Therein lies an amazing opportunity to grow and profit by adopting a new conscious business model that creates a flourishing for all of life on Earth. To do that, businesses need to develop both the awareness and the skills to consciously evolve their organization. Humanities Team's Conscious Business Initiative helps change agents and leaders institute conscious operating principles within their organization using a structured methodology that's supported by a community of practice. So that's just a little. We're excited that oneness, where we see that everything is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent, is coming to business because we think there's just such an incredible opportunity to create function where, in many cases, there's dysfunction today. So now, related to this, Humanities Team and our partners, the Club of Budapest, they're, of course, based out of Europe. The Goy Peace Foundation, they're based out of Japan, and the Fowler Center for Business out of Case Western University. We spent about a year working together to create a conscious business declaration that defines this whole new standard for business for the 21st century. It's based on oneness. And if you go to consciousbusinessdeclaration.org, you can read about it, and if it resonates, we invite you to sign it and become an ambassador for it. In other words, share it with your friends, share it in your workplace, share it with your family. It's about moving beyond this almost exclusive focus on profit by businesses to profit that comes from nurturing humanity and life on the planet. So I invite you to check that out. That's at consciousbusinessdeclaration.org. Now, we have some upcoming programs I don't want you to miss. Be sure to join us next Thursday where we've got a special program with Pierre Pradervand. He is the person out of Europe, out of France, who wrote this book called The Gentle Art of Blessing. Really just a beautiful, beautiful person. Our focus is going to be forgiveness, so it's going to bring in some of the themes Barbara and I have been talking about here. The program begins at 9 o'clock Pacific time. You can register at livinginone.com, and, of course, all of our programs are there on livinginone.com. The programs are free, and the recordings are also free for 48 hours if you miss the live program. This program and all of our programs in Humanities Team are free, and we're almost all volunteer, even at 13 years old. So if you resonate with the work that we're doing, where we're awakening oneness, creating social activism that's connected to our oneness, we invite you to financially contribute to our work. You can go to humanitiesteam.org to just read more about us, and you'll see the donate button there. Also, our program this week and always is focused on living in oneness, so I want to invite you to be part of something we created called the Humanities Team Community Circle. It's only $10 a month, and it's for those who wish to be part of an intentional community committed to living and embodying oneness, those who want to collaborate and connect with leaders engaged in spiritual activism, a community that gives and receives support, a program that gives you access to all of our audio links to the Living in Oneness Summit, Global Oneness Day, and more. We've got over 350 programs that you and your family can listen to for free once you join. We also created a Facebook community for it's private, just for Community Circle members. And about a month or 6 weeks ago, we started a weekly call. It's on Friday afternoons. It's currently at 5:30 Pacific time, where, again, just for Community Circle members, where we come together to share about our journey in oneness. So you can learn more about that by going to humanitiesteam.org. And if you go about halfway down the page, you'll see a big rectangle that says join and learn about Community Circle. I invite you to check that out. Barbara Fields, back to you. Thank you again for being here. Just really totally inspiring, wisdom-filled hour, and just so much loved having you with us. Thank you. Look forward to remaining in close touch.
You're welcome. It was my great honor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Really wonderful being with you, Barbara. I also want to thank my colleagues, Nanette Kennedy, Dee Meyer, and Monica Augustine, and they're the angels running the back end of this program and that helped to create the program. Last and definitely not least, each of you, our listeners, thank you so much for being here, for making it a priority to be part of our program today. And in closing, I want to invite everyone on this call listening into the recording to really live as one with the divine and each other. We believe this is ultimate reality, and this is one of the best ways to spread the invitation of oneness is to create the world that we've dreamed about and envisioned is to embody it and make our lives a living invitation. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next Thursday on May 5th at 9 o'clock Pacific time when we're back on the air with Pierre Pradervan. Okay, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Barbara. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, talk soon. Bye-bye.